today and just have a good discussion and see how Curry County can participate and assist. And I think the long-term goal is to draw in Douglas and Coos County as well. The map you sent, Ms. Maddox Hughes, very helpful. I see that there's only 14 counties that are not part of a broadband action team, and so we are getting a little bit of a late start, but it appears that if we can get this off the ground somehow, that we won't be the last one. And of course, I'd really like to get Curry County out of that category of not having representation. So yeah, we're pretty excited, and thank you all for joining us. And we're going to have that map available for a screen share in just a little bit. So, and then I have a letter that I'm going to read real quick from Coos Curry Douglas. That'll just take a minute. And I see Staff Jesuit is returning. And we have a chair that's not feeling particularly well, so we may have some understandable slight interruptions here. And I'm pulling up, let's see, the Haga letter now. Executive Director of Coos Curry Douglas, Teresa Haga. And I'm not finding that. Let's see. Okay, forgive us. I'm going to go to my office and grab that copy real quick. Now you're just down to one commissioner. Commissioner Hartzell.
Somebody's throat is sick.
Not the kid, there's only one commissioner.
That's right. We don't do anything in the workshop anyway.
That's true.
How's the salmon season doing down south for you guys?
It's been a little slow because we've got we had two big barges in the river trying to clean the rock out, so it's been a little slower than normal.
Yeah, I just went with a friend of mine on the LC, and they're saying the fish are a bit late up here, so.
So if I may, thank you. I have a letter of support from Coos Curry Douglas Business Development. I'm proud to serve on this board, and they're spread pretty thin, but we were talking the other day, and whatever we ask them to do, they will absolutely help, and they'll be part of the program to pull the other counties together, and because they're even maybe a little bit behind Curry County. This was written September 20th, yesterday. Establishing a regional broadband action team. Dear Curry County officials, CCD Business Development Corporation is the EDA, Designated Economic Development District organization for Coos, Curry, and Douglas counties. As a private nonprofit organization, we have been serving this region for over 50 years and our programs and services, excuse me. The COVID-19 pandemic has highlighted how important broadband is for the well-being of all Oregon residents across almost all facets of their lives, ranging from social and economic factors to education and health. In response to the apparent gaps in broadband availability and adoption, regional grassroots organizations, generally known as the Broadband Action Teams or BATS, have been established. It recently became our understanding that having an established BAT would enable our region to potentially access and compete for additional resources to address our broadband needs. The proposed Broadband Action Team request is aligned with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy. I want to repeat that, it's pretty important. It is aligned with the Regional Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, CEDS, through these points: infrastructure, workforce development, business retention and expansion, education, and health. Hard to prioritize those five. CCD supports the request to establish a regional broadband action team. Like other economic development districts, CCD recognizes that a lack of broadband is an impediment to local economic development objectives. We believe this project will bring economic benefits to our region in the form of long-term job retention and creation, economic recovery, and long-term resilience. Southwest Oregon is an economically depressed region. Whatever we can do to bring additional infrastructure resources to our region is critical to our future growth. Finally, CCD appreciates Curry County consideration to support the cost of contracting with Sequoia Consulting. Rachel Maddox Hughes has been engaging and involved with other broadband action teams. She is qualified to lead this group. That's an understatement. CCD is willing to participate in the BAT process, but currently does not have the capacity to lead the group. As a small nonprofit organization, CCD does not have the resources to contract at this time with Sequoia Consulting. Respectfully submitted, Teresa Haga, Executive Director. So, Mr. Chair, do you have something now?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Hope you're feeling better. So I think I'm just going to eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Can we go to Rachel Maddox Hughes first, please?
Yeah. Chair Herzog and Commissioner Pash, thank you all, and Commissioner Boyce, of course, thank you for having us here today. Just a little bit of background really quickly. So I am the founder of Sequoia Consulting, and our focus is solely on helping rural communities with resource development and also starting new initiatives. I've been involved with broadband since the beginning of the pandemic, actually before that as well in another career, but really we started up the Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and Lane regional broadband action team, and then that kind of somersaulted into other BATs around the state being set up. We now have broadband action teams in 22 out of the 36 counties. And the leaders of those broadband action teams meet on an every other week basis. And, you know, as a group, we've been able to accomplish a lot of pretty awesome things in terms of advocating for community participation in broadband processes at the state level, providing information to local elected officials, bringing partners together, applying for funding for feasibility studies. And actually it was the Broadband Action Team that came up with the idea of Faster Internet Oregon, which is a tool for local control over looking at your broadband issues. It maps speed tests, and then it gives you an opportunity to do analysis on the back end and get project costs and all those sorts of things. But basically what Broadband Action Teams can help you do is help prepare you for the up to $750 million that's coming down through the state from the federal government. And getting together a broadband action team now is not too late. But what it does is it brings together private, nonprofit, and public actors to the table, everyone who's touching a little bit of a different piece of the broadband issues. And it creates partnerships, it creates a flow of information between your community and the Oregon Broadband Office, which is really important because at this point in time, they are still woefully understaffed. And so, you know, it does position you well to be on the cutting edge of when information comes out about funding sources and helping to address those gaps and kind of having an overall community approach to solving your broadband gaps. So I'll leave it open. That's a lot of information all at once. What questions might you have for me? And I should say, I'm sorry, I should have said I also oversee and lead the statewide BAT leadership group, and I also lead the Faster Internet Oregon project for Link Oregon. So.
Thank you. Also invited to this meeting, I just want a little disclaimer here to make sure that the public knows that we're trying to involve all service providers and make sure we're as fair as we can possibly be. We have corresponded, and joining our last meeting, was, as I mentioned, was Jessica Epley with Zipley Broadband, David Hand from the Data Center West, Rick Duvall from 600 Amps, Jason Miller that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, from DFN, and we're still trying to get a hold of Charter Spectrum to make sure we're not losing anybody out. And Mr. Reckenzone, thank you very much for your help on. You had all these emails handy, and it was really helpful. So questions, obviously our board wants to take the lead here, but we're also going to need help. And can we bring that map up now by chance, or John?
Jerome has.
Oh, he has.
Jerome, can you put the map up?
we got this great new system, but the communication between the control tower and
on it.
There he is.
he did hear. So I'm going to be interrupted here gladly with the map that you provided, or the maps, Ms. Maddox Hughes, and thank you. And then I just want to kind of have it open to the floor here.
Yeah, and I should just, in addition, Commissioner, to what you mentioned about bringing ISPs on, that's definitely a huge part of the private group that I was speaking about in terms of stakeholders at the table. And broadband action teams are neutral, and they only work if there's local champions. So, you know, I am not from Douglas, Coos, and Curry counties, and I will own that. What I do have experience in, as well as my team member, Aaron Moss here, is, and he leads the Morrow County broadband action team, is putting these together and facilitating the conversation. It's not about somebody from the outside stepping in and leading you guys. It's really about saying, hey, let's make sure you guys have the tools and resources at your disposal to get the most for your community. So that's really dependent on local champions and local uptake.
We hardly view you as an outsider, okay?
Born and raised in Oregon, but you know,
Yeah.
don't get down to the South Coast as much as I'd like. Not in Portland.
We hear you loud and clear. Thanks again. So that the 750 million, of course, that's 750 million, obviously, and so, you know, naturally our antennas go up. I'm sure a lot of other counties as well, and are, you know, a few steps ahead of us perhaps, but you know, that organization is going to, especially the rural counties, you can see on your map how well they are represented there. Klamath County, Lake County, the three northeastern counties. You see them tied together on issues and projects through Association of Oregon Counties, of course, quite often, and then the 3 or 4 counties that you represent in the Central Coast. So yeah, this map was very helpful, and you know, with CCD and you know, knowing the commissioners in those 3 counties, I think the next phase, Rachel, might be to involve them and you know, contact them and see how they're doing. And we did have one Douglas County representative, so yeah, it's exciting, and we want to be able, as you said, and as Teresa Haga said in her letter of support, to be able to compete for these funds. It's if we don't, we know that the money's not going to come to our rural needs, and you know, what's the word always used is capacity. So that's all I have for right now. Did you have something, Chair?
No, excuse me. I do have a little bit. At 750 million, when I think about the project that Beacon Broadband is doing, and obviously we don't want, you know, the total amount given to us or in a grant or anything, but I think it seems to me that we could do broadband for the whole state, and you know, for 750 million, and to get everybody hooked up. Is that a pie in the sky evaluation, or what are you guys' thoughts, Paul? Aaron?
There's also an estimate that was done for the state. Aaron, do you remember that number off the top of your head to connect all the homes? It's like 1.5 billion or something like that, I want to say.
Yeah, and I would say that also, thank you for having me, Commissioner. Good afternoon. It sounds like a lot, and it will hook a lot of Oregonians up that don't have access and are unserved or underserved. But in Morrow County ourselves, they recently got an estimate for fiber to the home, which is the most future-proof technology for each household in the county, and we're talking about 1,300 homes that aren't connected, just given the terrain and the geography. That itself came back at $60 million. So we are looking at high cost, and this is the reason why money's coming down from the federal government, is that these are the areas that are uneconomical to build. So we will get close, and if it's done correctly, hopefully we can get there. We did hear today that it might even be more than 750 million. The broadband office at $1 billion today. So yeah, we're optimistic, and we think we can get there. But it's paying close attention to the process to make sure it's done correctly.
And I think too, Aaron makes a really good point that it is the places where it's uneconomical to build that hopefully this money will be directed to. And that's where your broadband action teams is working with your ISPs and your local school districts, health districts can help identify and make a case for those projects.
Aaron, you mentioned you used a label, and I didn't quite catch it there. Did you say Morrow County, correct? And what label did you use there that identified their project? I missed that.
So it was fiber to the home. So it's a fiber wire line that is dropped directly to people's homes. And we originally started with our broadband action team together decided at that point that they would make several different design options, and that was the first one just to see what it would cost because it was kind of the pie in the sky. And then we saw that, and they decided as a group. And this is the beauty of the broadband action team because we're talking the school district, the health district, as well as the Chamber of Commerce's 2 ISPs and representatives from the cities and county that wasn't going to work even with the grants. So now they're looking at alternative options, and that's just kind of the process of, you know, what's the best case scenario, and then what's realistic, whether it's one project or multiple, one partner or multiple. That's the value of kind of the work and doing it together. Yeah.
Very, very helpful. Paul, can we pull you in here, please?
Absolutely. Commissioners, thank you so much for having this meeting and giving us a little bit of time. There are maybe 3 things that I would like to say, and one of them I'm probably going to get in trouble for, but I'm going to go ahead and say, Shelley's grinning at me. I think she knows what it is. The first thing I'd like to say is, as you know, Beacon Broadband, a wholly owned subsidiary of Coos Creek Electric Cooperative, is fully engaged in getting fiber to the premises to every address within Coos Creek Electric Cooperative service territory. We have some federal funding to do that. We need more funding to be able to accomplish it. The big advantage that we provide to Curry County in particular is almost every address in Curry County is a Coos Creek Electric Cooperative customer. And so almost every single address in Curry County will be eligible for fiber to the premises when we complete our project. Most of rural Coos County is also in that same category, but we can't speak for all of Coos County like we can for Curry County. So the first thing that we'd like to say is we're very excited about the work that Beacon Broadband is doing and the opportunity we have to eventually provide service to these addresses. And we do truly hope with the assistance of state and federal funding. The second thing that we'd like to say is we think that the broadband action team is a critical aspect, not just for the deployment of broadband, which the bulk of the funding will be used for in the coming years, but also for broadband adoption. We have some constituents within this county and within our neighborhoods, some of the naysayers on the Beacon Broadband project who are going about preaching the message that nobody needs more than 20 megabits per second down and 5 megabits per second up. And it is frustrating to hear somebody try to tell their neighbors what they do and do not need. At Beacon Broadband, we believe in providing abundance. We don't sell a 20 megabit connection. We sell 500 megabits, a gig, and 2 gigs. So we believe in providing abundance to our end subscribers and letting them decide how much bandwidth they need to use, rather than dictating to them that they need to use less or to encrypt better or to do other things of that nature to fall within a smaller pipe. So the broadband action team is going to be incredibly important for adoption as well as for the deployment. To that end, Beacon Broadband is incredibly excited about getting the broadband action team up and running. But we also want to be incredibly careful that it's not just an arm of Beacon Broadband. That would be a complete failure if that's what happens. Even though we recognize that would be the case, we are happy, when I say we on this one, I mean Shelley, we are happy to go out and beat the bushes and talk to the chambers and talk to the schools and talk to the city governments and recruit as many people to participate in the broadband action team as we can possibly get. So the first commitment we're going to make to the broadband action team is Beacon Broadband. While we will have to take a back seat most of the time because we don't want to become an overpowering influence on the broadband action team. We will be there to recruit people. We will be there to help support meetings. We will be there to do whatever we can to make sure people are participating. I think we've exhibited that already as we've reached out to the other service providers and tried to encourage them aggressively to attend, and they have largely participated so far. The third thing that I would like to say, and the thing that's going to get me in trouble, is we understand that a consulting engagement with Sequoia would be an incredibly valuable thing, and Beacon Broadband is willing to provide some of the funding to make that happen. And so we turn that offer over to the Board of Commissioners and ask you to make an ask of us as to how much you need us to provide in order to make sure that we do get the Sequoia consulting engagement down, so that we can press forward with that experience behind us, instead of us just trying to make it up as we go along as a brand new team. Thank you for giving me that time.
Certainly, Paul, thank you. And I'm going to go back and listen to that again. I think you said it very well, and it just clears some things up for me personally, and again, very much appreciated. Ms. Maddox Hughes, would you mind? We were going to try and keep this to half hour. I think we're doing pretty good, but I don't want to overlook anything either that you might want to communicate. But your work with the other 3 or 4 counties, could you give us just a little bit of an outline of how they've worked together, and how you've been able to facilitate that, and how that's, the whole thing again is about competing, and how that's been a benefit to them in the whole project moving forward and their successes.
Absolutely, thank you, Commissioner. And I'll also let Aaron speak about Morrow County and what they've been doing. What I would say is that every single broadband action team is different and is responsive to the local needs. The Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, and Lane broadband action team, when we first started things up about 2 years ago, we focused on a lot of education of all of the stakeholders, so people knew what the challenges were. People who were non-technical kind of got their education raised up a little bit. And we brought in stakeholders. We have several ISPs. We have local elected officials or their representatives on the calls. We did a lot of building that community buy-in, and it sounds like we have a huge champion in Paul and his team to bring folks to the table, which is huge. So, having those local champions makes all the difference. Now, different broadband action teams. So if you look at Colpack, the Economic Development District up in the Northwest, they have worked with their local ISP to do, I think, work on 3 separate applications for middle mile projects at this point. In Morrow County, they're looking at feasibility studies. Our county, the county that I oversee, Lynn, Benton, Lincoln, Lane, I secured a $250,000 EDA grant for them to do feasibility studies, which basically gets you like, hey, here are the projects, here are the project costs, et cetera, to bridge those gaps. So it's different from each one, but generally you'll see a common theme of education, connecting partners, and going after funding. And then we all actually do quite a lot of advocating at both the regional and state levels with our elected officials to make sure that they understand the issues, provide our BATS as a resource if they have questions. Aaron, what would you add to that?
I think the only thing that I would add is just the reinforcement that broadband action teams largely are neutral, and especially or whoever would be facilitating us as given. Morrow County is not an apolitical place, but when we walk into that room, we're able to set in front of us the mission to get the kids that didn't have any internet during the pandemic internet, and set aside the competition for the moment, and set aside everything else that is going on, and really be able to focus on the mission and the goals. And we eventually put an official framework to that in terms of a rules of engagement and what the expectations are when we come together. But in general, it's really just focusing and reorienting ourselves on what we're trying to do together, and continue to walk in the same direction. I think the last thing would be Morrow County is doing it alone, just because there was some we started as a single county, but there is strength in numbers, and I think I don't know this for a fact. We haven't seen the rules yet, but counties and communities that work together as a group will have advantages, not only in the number of projects that are going on in the different services areas, but just the ability to show that they've all come together and can provide one or few projects that are discussed as a group and are brought forward as a group. So I think that is a significant strength and will be looked upon kindly, although I don't know that for a fact. That's just the indications.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a really strong point, Aaron. I'm glad you brought it up. It is true that I think applicants who can demonstrate public, private, and nonprofit as support, but at least public and private, are going to be much more competitive going after these funds.
Aaron, a minute ago, did you just use the word humility? I caught that. Thank you. Shelley, did you have anything to add?
No, the only thing I would have to add is like Paul said, I'm happy to go and talk to getting people involved into it. I just would really like to have a clearer picture on, why do we need these groups and these entities and stakeholders involved, and what value are they going to gain from it, and what it does for the community.
Well, thank you again. Rachel, the group that you helped pull together last Thursday, including Joseph Fresnel and Aaron, as I mentioned, and a couple others, we did this rather quick, and I think we were fortunate to get you on a part of your schedule that you actually had an afternoon open, or at least this part of the afternoon. And Mr. Fresnel really wanted to be here, join us virtually. Could you just give us a little bit about his background again? I mean, he was really kind of pulling for us, and he didn't have anything to gain other than just, he loves Oregon. And so if you wanted to just comment on that real quick, I'd sure appreciate it.
Yes, Joe Fresnel is definitely one of my mentors in this space. He is the president of Blue Mountain Networks, but beyond just his role as leading an ISP, he has one of the biggest hearts of anyone I've ever met, and he is so focused on helping rural communities get connected. And he, I think, is an advisor to literally every single broadband action team that exists right now in the state. The man is busy. And he's just a great resource, and he talks about the importance of broadband action teams and how they can bring together people who wouldn't normally be at the table together, and how it takes all of us rowing in the same direction to really get rid of the gaps that still exist. And it's mostly, the gaps that exist because of geography, or they exist because of poverty. Those are pretty much the two pieces.
I will say to that, though, the man is amazing. I agree, Rachel, because if anybody here know where Mitchell, Oregon is?
No.
Well, Mitchell, Oregon, it's not at the end of the world, but you can see it from there. If you're going to the John Day Valley from Bend, you go through Mitchell, and they have fiber to the home in Mitchell. And is it Wheeler County?
Yeah, I believe so.
I believe, anyway. And it's because of Joe, part of it is because of Joe Fresnel and his vision, and Blue Mountain, and the broadband teams that he's on. But it's kind of amazing because here we are in Curry County with, I think Wheeler County has, 1,500 people in it.
Yeah.
And they have, so we have a lot more than that, and don't have it yet to every home. So it's good to have Joe on board, and I think all of us that know him sing his praises. So
Maybe we'll invite him on the river to get him to come down and just show a little bit of appreciation there. But hey, Paul, did you have anything else before we sign off here?
Thank you again for taking the lead on this, Commissioner Boyce and the rest of the Board of Commissioners. This is an incredibly important thing. It's incredibly valuable that we can do it in Curry County and also include Coos and Douglas County and get them involved as well. Without your action, we would still be just talking about it. So thank you very much.
Well, Paul, a lot of counties have helped me and us over the years I've been here, and if we can get some traction on this, and I'm getting more confident every day, what we're able to accomplish together as a team will long-term benefit other areas that may not, those 14 counties that are not yet represented with a broadband action team. So thank you for those kind words, and back at you all. Thanks for being available in such short notice. And John, excuse me.
If real quick, if we have one person from the public here, Lynn Coker, if you got any questions for any of these folks, so it now would be the time. Is that for public
Good
comment?
job.
Yeah,
Good
we
job,
don't
Lynn.
want to. If we can't answer it, they can. And go ahead, right there, Lynn, and introduce yourself. And
Pull the mics down. No, no.
So good afternoon, it's a pleasure to be here next to commissioners.
Are they on? Is there a? We got a guy coming up behind you, Lynn. That'll
Someone's coming to the rescue.
turn them on.
Thank you.
There you go.
So the question goes to, I think, probably to Rachel and Aaron. As we look at deployment of broadband internet to the most remote locations, for instance, in Curry County, how do you see the ISPs coming together in order to do the uneconomic task of delivering broadband to those remote areas and doing it together? Is it by being better competitors, or is it by being better cooperators? Thank you.
I actually think that might be a question for Paul. Paul, do you want to jump in on that first, or do you want me to kind of tackle it?
So the pressure on me is that yes, we are a competitor and we compete with some of our other service providers here on the South Coast. And we have a couple of very good service providers here on the South Coast in Ziply Fiber and in Charter Spectrum. We also have services available from a handful of satellite companies here. The task that we were given when Beacon Broadband was created by Coos Curry Electric Cooperative was to make sure that the 20% of Coos Curry Electric Cooperative members who cannot financially feasibly receive broadband service, that we provide a mechanism to do so. Now, we would love to work in a cooperative manner with Ziply Fiber and with Charter Spectrum, so long as that cooperative manner of working did not undermine the business case of either one of any of the organizations. Each of our organizations has a will to survive, and each of our organizations will exercise that will to survive to the best of their ability. And so we have been in negotiations for more than, for a year. It was a year ago at Oregon Connections that we first started talking with Ziply Fiber about different ways that we could potentially work with them. Our proposals to Ziply Fiber have largely been looked at as not satisfactory to what Ziply Fiber wants to do. And likewise, their suggestions to us have been difficult for us to find a path that would continue to support the business model that we have. We want to cooperate with our other providers. We've reached out to Charter Spectrum up in Coos County. They won some RDOF funding, Rural Digital Opportunity Fund funding. They won that up in the northwest area of our proposed service territory, up by Sumner and Allegheny and up in the Gold and Silver Falls area. They have to transverse our service territory to get there. So we've reached out to them and said, hey, we will build this in conjunction with you so that we can both reduce costs in this area that we need to build. We've offered the same type of a joint build opportunity to Ziply Fiber. To date, we have not found a way to do that. So the difficult question that that Lynn places before us and that Rachel you bounced to me is yes, we are best served when we can cooperate. We are best served when the limited dollars that we have to build infrastructure are not used building the same infrastructure through the same communities that have service, but use those dollars to extend the networks out where they are not now. But that has to be done in a manner that allows the competitors to survive, or creates a model where the companies that are doing that can continue to provide service through time. So the short answer is, why, yes, of course, we're better served when we work together. The long answer is, but it's complicated.
Very
Thank
good.
you. And one other thing I would just add to that, to answer Lynn's question, is that broadband action teams, I think, play an important role in that they can help facilitate and, for lack of a more diplomatic word, sometimes put pressure on helping those partnerships happen maybe quicker, or at least getting more attention going on them, and maybe other partners to the table who can help out. But I think the long-term answer to those more remote places is that's why we have this federal funding coming down, because those places are not business model friendly. That's why they don't already have service. The more rural, more frontier you get, harder it is to make a business case. And I've seen in my experience where you have very community-oriented ISPs, which it sounds like obviously Beacon is, who say, you know what, we're going to put our own money into going after these federal applications to get the money to help us build in the places that are less financially feasible for us. So it's a combination of all the above.
Lynn, did you get an answer to your question?
I think Aaron had something afterward.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh,
you
sorry.
stay
I
up,
just wanted to.
Lynn?
add
You can
one
stay
more
up there if you
Yeah.
want, but
particularly for smaller counties and rural areas where it's uneconomical to build to, federal dollars for extending infrastructure even to the wholly unserved is not a lucrative thing. There may be a business case with some sort of subsidy, but it's still a labor of love. And for many, you have to be engaged and you have to want to do it. That's why we praise Joe. That's why Joe is amazing throughout the state of Oregon. It's because even with these dollars, there are just not enough people to serve, and that's why it's expensive, and that's why having engaged internet service providers working together to do the thing that they didn't want to do before or couldn't do just because it's uneconomical, having them engaged is important because it's still not something that is a very lucrative process for any of them.
Yeah.
Is my understanding.
So I do want to thank the commission, and I want to thank the panel for affirming almost 100%, I think, that it's economically not viable as a business model to take fiber optics to the home in those remote areas, and it is only going to happen through subsidization in some manner, even if we have cooperation amongst ISPs. It's a money-losing proposition. Doesn't mean that it can't be done, but from a business model, there's not one that supports it and delivers profitability. Am I right?
anybody chime in?
And my response to that would be to take fiber to the premises to those most remote areas without some other anchor in the business model to make it happen is financially infeasible. Beacon Broadband recognized that with the charter that we had from our parent company, Coos Prairie Electric Cooperative. And in recognizing that, we saw that the two things that we had to do in order to bolster the more remote areas and bring the fiber, the high-speed fiber experience where no one else will go, the things that we had to do was first, we had to secure federal funds. We did that initially before the project was approved with the grant of nearly $14 million over 10 years of RDOF funding. The second thing we recognized we needed to do was we needed to subsidize the areas of the network where there are 5 or 7 homes per mile, with areas of the network where there are 150 to 300 homes per mile. Unfortunately, the areas that have the high density are also the most appealing areas to organizations like Ziply and Charter Spectrum. So when we talk about the 20% of our Coos Prairie Electric Cooperative members who do not currently have access to a terrestrial-based broadband service, we are talking about a group of addresses that by themselves, if we were to not build in more dense areas, we would not be able to sustain the business model. But by being able to use higher density revenues to support those areas and federal funds to support those areas, We believe that we can. We believe that if we could add a third leg to that stool and have cooperation with other service providers, that would enhance our ability and make us a stronger organization as well.
Paul, about one of your legs under the stool, made up of federal funds, in order to get the $14 million grant, how much did we petition for? What did we envision the cost for service was and how much more than the 14 million was that? And then finally, that service area for the 14 million, how much of it actually covers CCEC members as opposed to additional geographic footprint?
And I'm going to beg off, Lynn, on those questions. The purpose of this particular meeting is the organization of a broadband action team. I greatly appreciate the question that you are asking and the questions that you are asking. I believe you have my email address, and if not, I'm happy to share it right now. It is paulr@beaconbroadband.com. I am more than happy to answer those very questions, but I believe that we are taking the commissioner's time away from the agenda item at this point. And if the commissioners direct me otherwise, I'll be happy to pursue that, but I want to respect their time.
I would just leave the meeting with this, subject to the chair's approval here. The bad business model, that gets my antennas up, but is it not quite common and the reality for all of rural America? And I mean, isn't everybody competing for these funds while at the same time looking over their shoulder going, the federal government money is there. If we don't compete for it, then it will go somewhere else. Am I making sense, Mr. Coker?
Correct, but I think
all rural America is in the same boat here.
no, they're not.
Okay.
Rural America is a great big piece of pie, and as a rural person, I take offense when somebody compares me to other parts of the country when it doesn't share my attributes. For instance, we have counties in Oregon that are truly very rural, like Aaron's footprint. Then you have counties like Curry County that's considered rural, but it doesn't look like Aaron's County. We have dense population centers in Curry County, and models for the delivery of information technology, broadband, are suitable for Curry County that may not be suitable for Aaron. So it's important that we not deal only at 30,000 feet in order to formulate policy and to understand how to do this effectively. We need to drill down on it. We really do.
But I did use the word generally. You know, that's to represent that in a sense of comparing, it's usually somewhat similar. I appreciate the analogy or the comparison used between Morrow and Curry County, and I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think you have more to learn about this, bro. Very much, Mr.
Don't we all? That's why we're here today. Thank you.
That's right.
Thank you all. If there's nothing else, we will adjourn this workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thank you.
Well, that worked good as far as the production part of it.